We are on chapter 9, section 3, the correction of error. So thanks again for joining everyone. And I'm going to share my screen now. And I use this handy dandy Course in Miracles that's on courseinmiraclesnow.com. If you're ever looking for this online, that's where it is, a courseinmiraclesnow.com. All right. So A Course in Miracles, chapter 9, section 3, the correction of error. The alertness of the ego to the errors of other egos is not the kind of vigilance the Holy Spirit would have you maintain. Egos are critical in terms of the kind of sense they stand for. They understand this kind of sense because it is sensible to them. To the Holy Spirit, it makes no sense at all. To the ego, it is kind and right and good to point out errors and correct them. This makes perfect sense to the ego, which is unaware of what errors are and what correction is. Errors are of the ego, and correction of errors lies in the relinquishment of the ego. When you correct a brother, you are telling him that he is wrong. He may be making no sense at the time, and it is certain that if he is speaking from the ego, he will not be making sense. But your task is still to tell him he is right. You do not tell him this verbally if he is speaking foolishly. He needs correction at another level because his error is at another level. He is still right because he is a son of God. His ego is always wrong, no matter what it says or does. If you point out the errors of your brother's ego, you must be seeing through yours because the Holy Spirit does not perceive his errors. This must be true since there is no communication between the ego and the Holy Spirit. The ego makes no sense, and the Holy Spirit does not attempt to understand anything that arises from it. Since he does not understand it, he does not judge it, knowing that nothing the ego makes means anything. When you react to all errors, you are not listening to the Holy Spirit. He has merely disregarded them, and if you attend to them, you are not hearing him. If you do not hear him, you are listening to your ego and making as little sense as the brother whose errors you perceive. This cannot be correction. Yet it is more than merely a lack of correction for him. It is the giving up of a correction in yourself. When a brother behaves insanely, you can heal him only by perceiving the sanity in him. If you perceive his errors and accept them, you are accepting yours. If you want to give yours over to the Holy Spirit, you must do this with his. Unless this becomes the one way in which you handle all errors, you cannot understand how all errors are undone. How is this different from telling you that what you teach, you learn? Your brother is as right as you are. And if you think he is wrong, you are condemning yourself. You cannot correct yourself. Is it possible then for you to correct another? Yet you can see him truly because it is possible for you to see yourself truly. It is not up to you to change your brother, but merely to accept him as he is. His errors do not come from the truth that is in him, and only this truth is yours. His errors cannot change this and can have no effect at all on the truth in you. To perceive errors in anyone and to react to them as if they were real is to make them real to you. You will not escape paying the price for this, not because you are being punished for it, but because you are following the wrong guide and will therefore lose your way. Your brother's errors are not of him, any more than yours are of you. Accept his errors as real, and you have attacked yourself. If you would find your way and keep it, see only truth beside you, for you walk together. The Holy Spirit in you forgives all things in you and in your brother. His errors are forgiven with yours. At one ment is no more separate than love. At one ment cannot be separate because it comes from love. Any attempt you make to correct a brother means that you believe correction is by you. You believe correction by you is possible, and this can only be the arrogance of the ego. Correction is of God, who does not know of arrogance. The Holy Spirit forgives everything because God created everything. Do not undertake his function, or you will forget yours. Accept only the function of healing in time, because that is what time is for. God gave you the function to create in eternity. You do not need to learn that, but you do need to learn to want it. For that, all learning was made. This is the Holy Spirit's use of an ability that you do not need, but that you made. Give it to him. You do not understand how to use it. He will teach you how to see yourself without condemnation by learning how to look on everything without it. Condemnation will then not be real to you, and all your errors will be forgiven. Well, that's interesting. We did just talk about that.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyone have any comments or questions?
So we have to look beyond all errors.
Yes.
Or what we perceive, we think as errors.
Yeah.
Right. Because if we do that, it corrects the errors in ourselves. When we perceive an error in our brother, we're just making it more real in ourselves.
Yeah, but it's a little bit difficult to look around the world today and without seeing errors. So,
Well, yes and no. It depends on what you choose to surround yourself with, right?
well, I'm thinking about things that you happen to see in the media, like what's happening in Afghanistan, for example.
Right.
You know, you've literally, according to the course, you've got to look past everything that you see that might be an error of any kind. And what was it? Any kind of condemnation you would have for anything,
Right.
you've got to look beyond that
Right.
to the
But
truth.
isn't any perception of an error just an ego judgment anyway?
Yeah.
So it's it's like telling you to take it one step further, to look beyond that and don't even bother to perceive something as error. It is what it is, and it's perfection. Whether you, and the only thing that labels it, good, bad, or whatever is an ego judgment, right?
That's right.
But I'm thinking about things like there's a lot of crime. We get guys going around with big pieces of plant equipment, sort of ramroding into money machines, and making off with them. You've got to look beyond all that error. You've got to ignore all the error.
Right. Right.
And you've got to look for the truth in
yeah,
everything.
it's across the board. Whenever we don't apply it to something, we're still allowing that duality to creep in. And some of the lessons from meditation come in here to work well, because we may have the thought that pops into our head, I'm going to judge this. I'm going to label it somehow. And then we're able to say, that was a thought. Thank you for sharing. And I'm choose to stay in my peace now, or whatever. And so as a human with a brain, we may still see those thoughts go by, but we don't have to. It's like going to the smorgasbord and seeing that there's mac and cheese there, and if I don't eat cheese, I'm going to skip that one. So we just don't get attached to that which is untrue or doesn't serve us, but we can still kind of, walk past it. It might even smell good, but we don't have to participate any more than that.
I think too, something that's interesting, and it says it here in the course as we'll be reading, is that in order to judge truly, you have to know everything about everyone's past, everyone's present, and everyone's future. And the only one that knows that is the one mind of God. So there's no way that our ego mind could judge anything correctly because we don't have all the information. I was watching a Facebook video today. It might have actually been on LinkedIn. I can't remember, but it was about this this elderly woman back in 1945 in New York that was going up against the judge because she had stolen a loaf of bread. And the storekeeper had, accused her and brought her in before this trial. And the judge, who was also the mayor that time, because I guess they wore different hats at different times, asked her, why did she steal the bread? Was she hungry? And she said, yes, I was hungry, but I didn't steal the bread for myself. I stole the bread for my grandchildren because their mother is ill and their father ran off, and it had been several days since they had eaten anything. So I stole the bread for my grandchildren because I just couldn't bear to watch them starve to death. And it ended up that the judge actually took he fined her with $10 or 10 days in jail. And she said that, she'd happily do the 10 days in jail, that if she had $10, she would have purchased the bread herself. So he took the $10 out of his pocket and gave it to her and said, I'm paying your bail for you. And then he fined everyone in the courtroom 50 cents a piece for not helping her and being, for kind of being part of the reason why she stole the bread in the first place. And I thought, wow, that is just such an interesting, beautiful way of handling, and they gladly paid it because they were so upset at her story anyway. So it goes back to, you just don't know why people do what they do. In essence, we are all of God, and things happen and we do things that, might not be perceived as right, and many times are perceived as wrong, but we don't have all of the information about why that happened.
Yeah. Paragraph 8 says it all, really. The Holy Spirit forgives everything because God created everything, and we don't need to undertake that function. And if we do, we're mistaken. And the example you're sharing is how it is then, of course, by the nudge of the judge in this case, but how it is then that we can operate, as this paragraph 8 says, to operate and function as healing in time. And that from that beingness, we can help the person who is needy or hungry or sick or any of those things,
Right.
that we might be helpful with in our function, rather than taking the function of God.
Who wouldn't judge them to begin with, right?
Right, exactly.
And I feel like, who are we to judge unless we're perfect?
Yeah,
Right.
but according to the Course in Miracles, you wouldn't be having people appearing in court. You wouldn't be having people accused of any crimes,
Right,
because
That's true.
nobody
Right.
would be recognizing the error.
right. That's
Yeah,
true
that's
too.
true. Yep. Mind-boggling.
We're just doing everything that everybody else does. We condemn criminality, but according to the Course, we wouldn't have judges. We wouldn't have a court system.
Right.
If we're
Well, the
doing
tiny,
everything-
but the tiny mad mind thinks that we're separated from God. So our ego is in play here on earth. Our
yeah.
ego is the one that gets us in trouble because it says I can do without the oneness and God. And the ego is driving all of the crazy around
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could never take anything personally and just show up with a grateful heart full of love to give in every situation? I mean, how different would our interactions be with people? And you don't know what would happen if you were in a situation where someone was ready to commit a crime and you just showed up with a heart full of love. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but maybe it would change it because you are actually helping to raise the vibration.
That's why I love kids so much and little babies. They're in the purest form.
That's true. Any other questions about what we just read, or shall we continue?
So I appreciated this entire thing. I thought it was funny, by the way, because you did say, like, when you asked at the beginning, does anybody have anything else to say? And I thought to myself, every week that Terry asks that and I vent something that's been on my chest, we literally end up reading about it. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to let that play out. And then Ernesto brought that to the table for us. So thank you so much. But I'm a highlighter, and I highlighted the entire first and second box here for the correction of error. And to kind of piggyback on what was said. So my current daytime job, full-time job is intimacy coaching. And I've struggled for the last 18 months because I primarily coach women. And the thing that I have to kind of paint a picture for is if they're struggling in their relationships. I don't like to say this, so I say, hear my heart when I say this, but we need to treat especially male partners often like toddlers and dogs. And the correlation obviously almost sounds offensive, but every human, even women, of course, we like to be treated that same way because it's all about positive association and reinforcement instead of punishment and consequence, and allowing that person to be curious and asking questions. And especially that aspect of, you don't have to know it all, you can ask for help, and there's no shame in that kind of philosophy. So this quote, he will teach you how to see yourself without condemnation by learning how to look on everything without it. That's it. That's that. Am I upset with my daughter when she still has an accident at 3 years old? No, because she's learning how to no longer go to the bathroom in a diaper. It's not that she should have known that from the beginning. I'm teaching her a new way to be. And so when we have that time and patience with everybody, then that's when we get this. But the problem is that we see people through the lens of an adult that they should already know better, forgetting that their programming came from childhood when they may have been limited to those experiences to be able to form critical thinking for themselves. So it's funny because, we're unlearning this stuff through the course, but as a general consciousness, we do it so backwards because we don't have the patience to think that through yet. And so that's why we're so offended or whatever. So this should just be a course in school. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, Ernesto, thank you for bringing up that topic earlier so that we could talk about it and see it in the Course in Miracles. I think it's so wonderful when everybody shares what's on their mind, because this is real life, and if we can't take the course principles and apply it to real life, we're not really benefiting from the experience, which is really so crucial to learning Course in Miracles, to having those experiences. So thank you everyone for bringing all that up.
That's a great point that you made. And also the other points that were made up. People are in a way in their mind focused on whatever it is they're thinking about or seeing or tasting or whatever is going on, their senses and involved in that. And all that's involved in this ego level of experience isn't really involved in this timeless experience of what the course is teaching. On the other side of that, there's no division, there's no separation, there's no way to judge because there's nothing to judge because everything is perfect. So how can we judge anything really? So what we're really doing is judging ourselves. We're really judging ourselves unworthy of God. Our separated minds are suffering and we desire that. We're attracted to it, is what we're really doing and saying and acting like. And so we can't be real that way. So it's wonderful that you shared that last part, especially Terry, because I think that's the reason I want to come to these kind of groups is because I don't really do this. I do what the course says. And then I hear questions that people say, and they say, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about the other thing? And I'm not accustomed to answering those kind of questions. To me, it's more important, though, that people can stay within their peace and within their sense of what the truth really is. And that's a really hard thing to do when these different levels of things occur in the world with our children or our jobs and spouses and this and that and so on. Very, very complicated when the truth gets reduced into levels and gradations and aspects of things. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good point. And I find that the Course always brings it back to, it's simple.
Mhm.
It's not easy, but it's always simple, right? Always simple. Okay, let's keep going and see what other juicy things we can learn today. We are on the Holy Spirit's plan of forgiveness. All right, the Holy Spirit's plan of forgiveness. And I know I say at-one-ment, and I do realize it is pronounced atonement. My husband went to a Course in Miracles study group with me once, and he said, I don't understand why no one knows how to pronounce that word. And I said, well, they do. I prefer to say at-one-ment, but that's just the way I like to read it. Makes more sense to me. Okay. At-one-ment is for all, because it is the way to undo the belief that anything is for you alone. To forgive is to overlook. Look then beyond error and do not let your perception rest upon it, for you will believe what your perception holds. Accept as true only what your brother is, if you would know yourself. Perceive what he is not, and you cannot know what you are, because you see him falsely. Remember always that your identity is shared, and that its sharing is its reality. You have a part to play in the at-one-ment, but the plan of the at-one-ment is beyond you. You do not understand how to overlook errors, or you would not make them. It would merely be further error to believe either that you do not make them or that you can correct them without a guide to correction. And if you do not follow this guide, your errors will not be corrected. The plan is not yours because of your limited ideas about what you are. This sense of limitation is where all errors arise. The way to undo them, therefore, is not of you, but for you. The at-one-ment is a lesson in sharing, which is given you because you have forgotten how to do it. The Holy Spirit merely reminds you of the natural use of your abilities. By reinterpreting the ability to attack into the ability to share, he translates what you have made into what God created. If you would accomplish this through him, you cannot look on your abilities through the eyes of the ego, or you will judge them as it does. All their harmfulness lies in the ego's judgment. All their helpfulness lies in the judgment of the Holy Spirit. The ego too has a plan of forgiveness because you are asking for one, though not of the right teacher. The ego's plan, of course, makes no sense and will not work. By following its plan, you will merely place yourself in an impossible situation to which the ego always leads you. The ego's plan is to have you see error clearly first and then overlook it. Yet, how can you overlook what you have made real? By seeing it clearly, you have made it real and cannot overlook it. This is where the ego is forced to appeal to mysteries, insisting that you must accept the meaninglessness to save yourself. Many have tried to do this in my name, forgetting that my words make perfect sense because they come from God. They are as sensible now as they ever were, because they speak of ideas that are eternal. Forgiveness that is learned of me does not use fear to undo fear, nor does it make real the unreal and then destroy it. Forgiveness through the Holy Spirit lies simply in looking beyond error from the beginning, and thus keeping it unreal for you. Do not let any belief in its realness enter your mind, or you will also believe that you must undo what you have made in order to be forgiven. What has no effect does not exist. And to the Holy Spirit, the effects of error are non-existent. By steadily and consistently canceling out all its effects everywhere and in all respects, he teaches that the ego does not exist and proves it. Follow the Holy Spirit's teaching in forgiveness then, because forgiveness is his function, and he knows how to fulfill it perfectly. That is what I meant when I said that miracles are natural, and when they do not occur, something has gone wrong. Miracles are merely the sign of your willingness to follow the Holy Spirit's plan of salvation, recognizing that you do not understand what it is. His work is not your function. And unless you accept this, you cannot learn what your function is. The confusion of functions is so typical of the ego that you should be quite familiar with it by now. The ego believes that all functions belong to it, even though it has no idea what they are. This is more than mere confusion. It is a particularly dangerous combination of grandiosity and confusion that makes the ego likely to attack anyone and anything for no reason at all. This is exactly what the ego does. It is unpredictable in its responses because it has no idea of what it perceives. If you have no idea what is happening, how appropriately can you expect to react? You might ask yourself, regardless of how you may account for the reaction, whether its unpredictability places the ego in a sound position as your guide. Let me repeat that the ego's qualifications as a guide are singularly unfortunate, and that it is a remarkably poor choice as a teacher of salvation. Anyone who elects a totally insane guide must be totally insane himself. Nor is it true that you do not realize the guide is insane. You realize it because I realize it, and you have judged it by the same standard I have. The ego literally lives on borrowed time, and its days are numbered. Do not fear the last judgment, but welcome it, and do not wait, for the ego's time is borrowed from your eternity. This is the second coming that was made for you as the first was created. The second coming is merely the return of sense. Can this possibly be fearful? What can be fearful but fantasy? Who turns fantasy unless he despairs of finding satisfaction in reality? Yet it is certain that you will never find satisfaction in fantasy, so that your only hope is to change your mind about reality. Only if the decision that reality is fearful is wrong can God be right. And I assure you that God is right. Be glad then that you have been wrong. But this was only because you did not know who you were. Had you known, you could no more have been wrong than God can. The impossible can happen only in fantasy. When you search for reality in fantasies, you will not find it. The symbols of fantasy are of the ego, and of these you will find many. But do not look for meaning in them. They have no more meaning than the fantasies into which they are woven. Fairy tales can be pleasant or fearful, but no one calls them true. Children may believe them, and so, for a while, the tales are true for them. Yet when reality dawns, the fantasies are gone. Reality has not gone in the meantime. The second coming is the awareness of reality, not its return. Behold, my children, reality is here. It belongs to you and me and God, and is perfectly satisfying to all of us. Only this awareness heals, because it is the awareness of truth. Okay. Any comments or questions?
I love the descriptions of the second coming.
I know, I always love that in this.
I was just
Second
going to say that, Carol, where it says the second coming is the awareness of reality, not its return.
Only this awareness heals because it is the awareness of truth. And it really stood out for me when Eric said how in the world we can reduce truth to gradations. And when we come from the aspect of the truth, everything is at one.
You know, I've been practicing what we talked about a few weeks ago, Carol, when we were talking about, I think it was you, we were talking about the Holy Spirit and rest in peace, right?
Mhm.
And so at night, every night now before I go to bed, I say, I give my mind to the Holy Spirit so I can rest in peace. And then I've been doing it in the morning too. When I wake up, I say, I give my mind to the Holy Spirit so I can be in peace. And, you know, it's just that
Affirmation.
affirmation. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes. Thank you.
An intention.
An intention, right? Of how you're going to start your day and how you're going to sleep at night,
Mhm.
right? So I appreciate that comment that you had, and you're like, I do it every day. I'm like, oh, you do? I'm going to do it every day then.
Yeah,
And then eventually,
Mary actually
and then-
pointed that out, but I do that as well.
Yeah.
yeah, and then eventually, as you say it, when you start to experience it, that statement will get refined, and it's we are, no longer sort of asking but in the beginning, you're trusting something bigger than yourself, because we don't feel like we have that power to do it, or otherwise, like, why wouldn't we have already? Well, it took us so long. So to get out of that mindset, we wind up trusting something bigger, but eventually we get that it is our higher self, it is our self in concert, in unity with the all in all, and therefore we no longer see the separation as we evolve in it. We are not separate from source. And so we just wake up affirming that, you know, this day, this moment is wonderful, and this is how it will be. And we go to bed affirming that, you know, this day has been, you know, the best ever, until tomorrow is then the best ever. But, you know, this has been the best ever, and I'm filled with gratitude and love and good night kind of thing.
Well, I think we need to say it because it is how it's the sacredness of it that is affirmed. I believe, you know, because I was searching for, I'm giving my mind to God. And so, well, okay, I'll just say I'll give my mind to the universe.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just the words. I mean, that's all it is. It's just words, knowing that you are seeking this higher self, like you said, Mary.
Yeah.
You know, that's it.
And that's true, Ernesto, too, because I think we get into these habits, right? These unconscious daily habits. You get up, you get your coffee, you do this, you brush your teeth, and to actually be conscious and live consciously so you can create consciously. It's nice to have that words to be able to say that intention and that mantra or whatever it is that we're calling it, to say that today my mind is aligned with my true self. And just a reminder for me. So, you know, I think I first had that epiphany that I am God when I watched that Shirley MacLaine movie, Out on a Limb. And it was so weird for me to say those words. And I thought, oh gosh, that does not sound right. And it didn't feel right. And none of it felt, I had such an uncomfortable relationship with the word God. And to say that word just made me feel really icky. But, you know, after saying it several times, standing on the edge of a berm, looking out into the ocean, I actually embodied it. And wow, I'll tell you, my relationship with that word has changed ever since. And it's more like an understanding and a knowing that I am one with all of it. I am one with that mind of God. And I think for me, it's more of a reminder to say it in the morning, like, okay, I've experienced this, and now I have to remind myself to be it and to be in that place of at one-ment.
What was the word, Terry?
Just to say today, I I give my mind to the Holy Spirit, or I align with the universe, or whatever your word for God is,
Okay.
whether it's, universe or source energy or God, or, the multiple other words.
I
Bob,
find that I connect with God more in silence, actually, than anything to do with my mind.
Mm,
For me, silence, going into the silence makes it more accessible. I do
right.
appreciate the thought of the affirming the truth,
Mm-hmm.
claiming the truth, declaring the truth. But I actually get to it more through silence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. It's, once you quiet down that monkey mind,
Mm.
and there's a lot of great breathing techniques and things, reverse breathing and things like that, to get to that, to quiet that mind too.
Mm. Because it is beyond the mind, isn't it? Actually, our
It is.
our connection, our truth is beyond the mind.
Right.
The mind is part of consciousness, which is ego, isn't it?
Right. Well, I think that's why the word Holy Spirit works for me, because I know that according to A Course in Miracles, the Holy Spirit is the bridge that connects the mind with God, right?
Mhm.
So if I give my mind to the Holy Spirit, then I'm basically saying I connect to that bridge, the cosmic goo that connects me to that one mind of consciousness, the one mind of God, whether that's consciousness or something else completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right.
yeah, I think it's the image that we probably perceive as God that is I guess the realm, the nitty gritty of how we are able to transcend this body, that because growing up as a Christian, the image was like this father in the sky, and that's I guess that's I know that's not true. So the truth of it is, I guess, is the how we seek within our own spirit of it. So
Right,
whatever gets us there, right?
right, right.
Well, I want to say that I appreciate, and I certainly did all of those things, Terry. So I'm, grateful for anyone else who is doing that, setting an intention and then actually living it. And for me as well, it started out before bed and first thing in the morning. And then I didn't, do as much of that all day. And then it became, more of a consciousness of, oh, I said this or I thought that. And, how can I adjust that so that I feel that same peace and gratitude that I feel when I say this little mantra in the morning and at night. And that just got longer and longer throughout the day. But what I was just saying was my experience now is to be able to go beyond the duality, and I'm aware that I consciously see things as one, because I in fact even see spirit as that connection that made me one with God. So I'm not looking at the bridge, I'm on the bridge and therefore not even seeing the bridge, because I'm at the other side, kind of enamored with those experiences. So it just keeps going as life and change keep happening. The experience just gets deeper and deeper as you go.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Mary.
And now knowing that there's other people doing it enhances the feeling, the thought, whatever you want to call it, knowing that, oh, I know Terry's doing this. I know, oh, Mary's doing this. I know Freddie, and probably there's thousands of people doing this. That's even more more helpful, because now we're sharing in this thing.
Yeah. I think it's also helpful, Mary, to get that perspective of being on the bridge, because I think so many people think, ooh, if I let go of my ego, I'll die. right? And Mary's like, I'm on the bridge. There's no death. Life is eternal. What are you talking about? Right? So it's awesome.
Well, Mary's there with God. Mary is having an experience of being God, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And
Mary?
Yes.
Are you having the experience of oneness with God? I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Yes, I believe that I am unpacking that experience that started for me last September. So it's been basically a year of knowing that is and understanding it somehow conceptually back here on the earth plane of what, I was given the gift of experiencing. And so the gift is available to all of us.
Yeah.
I just said yes, but it's amazing.
I love
Well-
that. I just said yes. I love that, Mary.
Yeah, the truth is we can't leave God anyway, except that we've forgotten
Right.
that we're one with God.
True, true. I see someone else is on the line and I'm not sure what your name is, but I thought maybe you wanted to talk. I saw the yellow box light up around your phone number.
Yes, I'm Katie from Germany.
Oh, hi, Katie. Great to have you here.
Yes,
Did you-
Eric told me about this meeting.
Beautiful. Well, it's good to have you here. Did you want to share anything?
Yes, I thought today I felt I made today a call I called a customer service and I projected on the man that he's angry, and now I see that it's the anger I didn't release within me, and now and when I let that sink into my mind, after some time it was like he's telling me to do my forgiveness process.
Right.
I thought that really great to have in my mind that someone who's not of A Course in Miracles encourages me to practice forgiveness.
Exactly. And it's so true, right? We see these others, right? Oh, they're not doing A Course in Miracles and they're not, they're coming at me and they're angry, but aren't they our teachers? And they're telling us to practice forgiveness. You're exactly right.
And I also, yeah, that's great. And I also thought if I would just go to him and say, look, do you want me to judge about you or not? He would say, what's that? Is that really a question?
What are you talking about?
Yes.
Exactly. But our brothers are here to teach us and we can't get there without them, right? Because without being able to see them as complete and whole and perfect, we can't see ourselves as complete and whole and perfect. So they're all teaching us.
Yes.
Okay, shall we continue? We've got another 16 minutes. Anybody else have anything to share? Or should I continue reading?
I just real quickly wanted to say that in paragraph 6, line 4, it refers to something that was in the previous section. His work is not your function, and unless you accept this, you cannot learn what your function is. The confusion of functions is so typical of the ego that you should be quite familiar with it by now. And I just think that is stated very clearly.
So true. I'm getting truth bumps as you read that.
Yeah.
That's so true.
It's particularly dangerous combination of grandiosity and confusion that makes the ego likely to attack anyone and anything for any reason at all.
Yeah. Which goes back to the guy that's driving into the money machine, right? Okay, let's keep going. We are on the unhealed healer. Oh gosh, I always love this one. Course in Miracles, chapter 9, section 5, the unhealed healer. The ego's plan for forgiveness is far more widely used than God's. This is because it is undertaken by unhealed healers and is therefore of the ego. Let us consider the unhealed healer more carefully now. By definition, he is trying to give what he has not received. If an unhealed healer is a theologian, for example, he may begin with a premise, I am a miserable sinner, and so are you. If he is a psychotherapist, he is more likely to start with the equally incredible belief that attack is real for both himself and the patient, but that it does not matter for either of them. I have repeatedly said that beliefs of the ego cannot be shared, and this is why they are unreal. How then can uncovering them make them real? Every healer who searches fantasies for truth must be unhealed because he does not know where to look for truth and therefore does not have the answer to the problem of healing. There is an advantage to bringing nightmares into awareness, but only to teach that they are not real and that anything they contain is meaningless. The unhealed healer cannot do this because he does not believe it. All unhealed healers follow the ego's plan for forgiveness in one form or another. If they are theologians, they are likely to condemn themselves, teach condemnation, and advocate a fearful solution. Projecting condemnation onto God, they make him appear retaliative and fear his retribution. What they have done is merely to identify with the ego, and by perceiving what it does, condemn themselves because of this confusion. It is understandable that there have been revolts against this concept, but to revolt against it is still to believe in it. Some newer forms of the ego's plan are as unhelpful as the older ones because form does not matter and the content has not changed. In one of the newer forms, for example, a psychotherapist may interpret the ego's symbols in nightmare and then use them to prove that the nightmare is real. Having made it real, he then attempts to dispel its effects by depreciating the importance of the dreamer. This would be a healing approach if the dreamer were also identified as unreal. Yet if the dreamer is equated with the mind's corrective power through the Holy Spirit is denied. This is a contradiction even in the ego's terms, and one which it usually notes even in its confusion. If the way to counteract fear is to reduce the importance of the mind, how can this build ego strength? Such evident inconsistencies account for why no one has really explained what happens in psychotherapy. Nothing really does. Nothing real has happened to the unhealed healer, and he must learn from his own teaching. His ego will always seek to get something from the situation. The unhealed healer, therefore, does not know how to give and consequently cannot share. He cannot correct because he is not working correctively. He believes that it is up to him to teach the patient what is real, although he does not know it himself. What then should happen? When God said, "Let there be light," there was light. Can you find light by analyzing darkness, as the psychotherapist does? Or like the theologian, by acknowledging darkness in yourself and looking for a distant light to remove it, while emphasizing the distance? Healing is not mysterious. Nothing will change unless it is understood, since light is understanding. A miserable sinner cannot be healed without magic, nor can an unimportant mind esteem itself without magic. Both forms of the ego's approach then must arrive at an impasse, the characteristic impossible situation to which the ego always leads. It may help someone to point out where he is heading, but the point is lost unless he is also helped to change his direction. The unhealed healer cannot do this for him, since he cannot do it for himself. The only meaningful contribution the healer can make is to present an example of one whose direction has been changed for him and who no longer believes in nightmares of any kind. The light in his mind will therefore answer the questioner, who must decide with God that there is light because he sees it. And by his acknowledgement, the healer knows it is there. That is how perception ultimately is translated into knowledge. The miracle worker begins by perceiving light and translates his perception into sureness by continually extending it and accepting its acknowledgement. Its effects assure him it is there. A therapist does not heal, he lets healing be. He can point to darkness, but he cannot bring light of himself, for light is not in him. Yet being for him, it must also be for his patient. The Holy Spirit is the only therapist. He makes healing clear in any situation in which he is the guide. You can only let him fulfill his function. He needs no help for this. He will tell you exactly what to do to help anyone he sends to you for help, and will speak to him through you if you do not interfere. Remember that you chose the guide for helping, and the wrong choice will not help. But remember also that the right one will. Trust him, for help is his function, and he is of God. As you awaken other minds to the Holy Spirit through him, and not yourself, you will understand that you are not obeying the laws of this world. But the laws you are obeying work. The good is what works, is a sound, though insufficient statement. Only the good can work. Nothing else works at all. This course offers a very direct and very simple learning situation and provides the guide who tells you what to do. If you do it, you will see that it works. Its results are more convincing than its words. They will convince you that the words are true. By following the right guide, you will learn the simplest of all lessons. By their fruits, ye shall know them, and they shall know themselves. Ooh, that was really good. I really like that. Just another reminder to listen to the voice inside of you, right? It brings me back to an argument I had at one point with within one of my relationships, and the argument was making no sense, and I was completely caught off guard and dumbfounded. I didn't even know what to say to this person who was just berating me and yelling at me. And I remember I lit a candle and I just tried to quiet my mind, and I looked into the candle and I literally let go and let God. And this stream of consciousness just came through me. And I was like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? And it was the perfect thing to say. And it wasn't even in relation to what he was saying. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, he wasn't saying, well, you did this. And I wasn't saying, well, that was because of that. It had nothing to do with what he was saying. It was just this stream of consciousness that came out and just put the fire out. And I can't even tell you right now what I said, but whatever it was just like the perfect resolution to the situation without engaging in the conflict. It's so nice when you can like quiet your mind in those places where you're in turmoil, right? And you can just say, this is not real. And go to the truth inside of you and pull on that to speak through you, right? Isn't that the whole thing? Allow the Holy Spirit to speak through you.
Get out of your own way. Yeah.
Exactly. Because the ego never has a good answer, especially when it's already aligned with fear.
So the process that you went through, did it resolve the conflict with the other person for the other person?
At the moment it did. At the moment it did. And, you know, Course in Miracles always says that you know you've chosen the right teacher when it resolves the conflict for everyone involved.
Hmm.
And it goes back to only the one mind knows all things past, all things present, and all things future. There's no way you can know that.
I find a good way of resolving conflict is purely by letting go.
Exactly.
You know.
And that's what I did without even any intention of saying anything. I was just trying to be at peace.
Hmm.
I had no intention of even saying anything or doing anything. So when the words came through me, it wasn't even like I was trying to conjure them. I was just like trying to get my mind at peace.
So you let go of the reactionary state and wound up in that state of peace or presence.
Yes.
And that uncovered a block, which released that presence for you, which then the other person got. And it goes quite often without words, just your state. Because if you're reactionary, then you have a defensive stance, whether you're even aware of it. Your tone of voice, your heavy breathing, whether your posture of being tense. And as you come to some awarenesses, and you also discover, like, why did I react like that? And is that what I need? Does that serve me? Is that who I am? Is that what I need to continue to do? And that whole undoing that can happen in an instant changes the next moment of now.
Sure. And since we are all energy, it just makes perfect sense that the energy you bring into the room can just simply change it. Absolutely. Anybody else have any comments or questions about anything we just read or anything we've read today, since we probably won't be reading anything else?
Well, the other part of that, of being able to diffuse a situation like that, if I cannot say anything, I just go silent and let the other person go on and on and on and on. You know, and just me calming myself works that energy thing that we're all talking about, calms the other person down. That's my experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll say something, you know, sometimes that works too, if it just comes out of me.
Mhm.
I'll never forget that I had a conversation like that with somebody that was like not happy with the way I was teaching this yoga class, and it was going off. And I was getting exasperated because I couldn't come back with anything, you know. And I went silent, and then she finally said, and I'm a God-fearing Christian. And all of a sudden it just came out of me. I said, I'm a God-loving Christian. And her whole face just came down like, and stopped talking. Just saying that.
Always works for me. The old say, if you got nothing good to say on an argument, keep your mouth shut. And sometimes
Right.
I will calm down the character of that person that is invoking you to have those thoughts. And that's what is complicated on my behalf, because it's his reality, but I'm seeing through it, like the history, the story was telling us is very difficult. It's very subjective when you try to see from somebody's eyes. But I think it's part of the learning, the way I see it. But if you got nothing good to say, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice.
That has worked also, right? Just stay quiet.
Well, it's great to
Mine
have.
might get,
Go ahead.
Mine might get shut when I remember what Ken Wapnick said. He said, either everyone is right or everyone is wrong.
That's good advice too, right?
Yeah.
Now I can't argue.
No argument there, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's 1:30 and it's our closing time. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. It's great to be back. Good to see all of you. Freddie, great to see you. You look much better now. You feeling better?
Much better, thanks.
Great.
No more COVID. Got rid of that.
Yay.
All
Well,
right.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear
And
that.
it's great to see you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be back. Good to see you, Alberto, the whole time. Sometimes you're not able to join us, so it's good to see you, and Pam and Alicia and Rachel. Great to see all of you. Carol, Carl, Carla, great to see you here. And Mary, and I forgot your name from Germany.
Katie.
Katie?
Yes.
Excellent. Great to see you too. I'll make sure I put that on your phone number so that we can all remember your name next time. Thanks for joining. And then, so I'll see you next week, next Monday,
Yeah.
12 o'clock, if you want to come on early for some conversations, which are always amazing and wonderful. And thank you for bringing everything up. Great to see everyone.
See you
God
all.
bless you,
Bye,
Mary.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh.
Thank you.